The Senate should be composed of 2 senators from each state, so that's 100 senators that represent all 50 states. All right, and then remember, we've talked about this once already when we covered the amendments, but the 17th Amendment allows citizens to elect only 1 senator in each state at the regular November elections. Mm-hmm. Yes, so everything that's in blue, you need to write down, and then you want to write down that 100 senators is what the total body is.
Wait, we all write in this.
Yes, you're writing the bottom portion of that one. Yes, ma'am. All right, so here's a interesting question for you. All right, there's 100 members that make up the Senate. All right, but this past Friday, after the inauguration was over, the Senate reconvened to vote on General Mattis and General something for the 2 positions. One was going for the head of the CIA, and the other one, General Mattis, was the guy who's going to be in charge of the Department of Defense. All right, a little background about General Mattis. General Mattis is actually a Washington, D.C. favorite among both Republicans and Democrats. He's well-liked and well-respected by both parties. All right, his vote was 98-1. All right, so 98-1.
It was a woman who didn't.
It was one Democrat who voted against him, female Democrat. That's I'm not really sure why, don't know why, but the question is, okay, if you added the 98 in, 1 plus 98 is 99. Why is it not a full 100% body?
See the other one?
Nope. President what? Anybody know what the name's named? President pro temp of the Senate doesn't get to vote, all right, because the vice president wasn't there. We'll talk about that. So if the vice president's there in the Senate, then you could potentially have 100 members voting, all right, but whenever the vice president's not there, there's a person called the president pro temp of the Senate, which sits in when the vice president's not there and controls Senate. And so he was not, our new vice president wasn't there, and so the president pro temp was there dealing with the Senate confirmation. So that's why we didn't have a full 100% majority. All right? Make sense? You are staring into blank space.
I don't feel good, that's all.
Still? I'm sorry. Don't need more candy. All right. Does everybody have this written down? Okay. All right, so flip back over. All right, so on the Senate side of that sheet that's long ways, the first part was House where we wrote the qualifications. Do you see something on there that says Senate side and then it says term limits? Okay, 1 term equals 6 years. 1 term equals 6 years. All right, so a senator serves for 6 years. All right, there are no limits on how long you can serve. No limits. You just have to continue to win re-election. Yes, ma'am. There's no limit on the House either. All right, how long does a House term last? 1 year equals 2 terms. Yep. All right, so now this is interesting. So the Senate, you can also have this underneath term limits or term. The Senate is a continuous body, which means all of the seats are never up for an election at the same time. So roughly, at the most you'll ever have in an election is 33 people up. All right, because the way they're set up is that if I won re-election now, all right, that means that I'll serve a 6-year term, but every 2 years is when basically senators' terms will expire. All right, so it's staggered that way. So like we just had an election where we had some senators up. All right, so next year we'll have an election. There probably won't be any senators up for re-election or election unless there's somebody's that has to have a special election. All right. So that means that we'll have to wait 2 years for another round of senators to have re-election or election. All right, the legislative branch is kind of complicated because the House and the Senate have different term limits in terms of how long, what's 1 term equal, how does the voting process work on re-electing them. So I apologize. And ahead. All right. So for qualifications to be a senator, you have to be 30 years old. You have to live in the United States for at least 9 years. And again, you have to live in that state. All right, so qualifications for Senate, 30 years old, live in the U.S. for at least 9 years, and you have to inhabit that state from which you want to be from. Now, what's interesting both about the House and the Senate is we haven't seen anywhere in there that says you have to be a natural-born citizen. You don't. All right, so you can move to the United States, become a citizen, say you're from Canada or Australia or wherever. As long as you become a citizen and live there for the time, the requirements, and be that old, you can run and become senator or House representative, or in some states, governor, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and replace Donald Trump on Apprentice. So. Now the stats have not come out for the new Congress that we just got, but in the previous Congress, I will tell you that there were about almost 15 members in either the House or the Senate, because they don't break them down; they just break them down by the Congress. That all they had was a high school diploma. So about 15 people in Congress in the last Congress had nothing more than a high school diploma, and they were serving as either House Representative member or senator. So there were a lot of there's a lot of people that serve in the House and Senate that are former doctors and lawyers and teachers and people like that, because not only do you make the bills and the laws, you also serve on committees. All right, so they try to put you on a committee based on your kind of experience and what you're interested in. So like if you're interested in healthcare and you have a healthcare background, then they're going to put you on that the healthcare committee. So. Hayden, you tired? You got to school early today.
Yeah.
All right. So, compensation. This goes for both House and Senate. All right, so you can write it either in the House side or the Senate side on the long sheet of paper where we wrote down the qualifications. Guys, where it says money. You'll see that? Yeah, salary and benefits. That's what we're talking about right now. All right, so the Constitution says thou shall receive a compensation for their services ascertained by law. Right? That kind of expected. We got to pay them, right? I mean, got to do something. All right, so this means that Congress fixes its own pay. Remember, what amendment can they change their pay by? 27th Amendment. Who said that? Who said 27? Anybody? You want candy? Okay. All right. So for a senator and a regular House of Representative member, okay, their pay is $174,000 a year. You think that's too much, Connor? It's interesting. I was reading this article the other day prior to Donald Trump's election. A lot of people are freaking out and still freaking out that Donald Trump took the oath of office and he's going to be able to undo everything just as president. Well, the president doesn't really have that much power. Okay? At the end of the day, we don't put enough blame on these people. All right? Congress is really who has more power. I mean, think of in terms of how long is Article 1 of the Constitution. It's really, really long. Okay? They have all the power. I mean, they make the laws. Okay, yes, he signs them, the president signs them, but these people at the end of the day are the ones who are writing our laws for our country. They're the ones who are making the big changes. It's not the president. It's not oftentimes the judicial branch. It's Congress. And as American citizens, we like to blame who? The president, because we all think the president has all this power. But really and truthfully, the president doesn't have a lot of power. Okay? Congress does. And they get paid a lot of money for what they do, which in some years has not been a lot. All right? Now, the Speaker of the House, so Paul Ryan, all right, he's making $223,500 a year as Speaker of the House. Yes, he has a little more responsibility, but still, up until Bill Clinton's second term, the president was making just $200,000 a year. All right, and then when they changed the president's pay, they also changed their pay. All right, now the president gets paid $400,000 a year, and the Speaker of the House makes $223,500. So again, a good chunk of money. All right, so that President Pro Temp that I was telling you about, and then floor leaders in the House. So in the House and the Senate, we have majority and minority leaders. All right, when we talk about majority and minority, We're not talking about race or ethnicity. We're talking about party. All right, so right now the Congress is controlled by which party? The Republican Party. So the majority leaders are Republican. The minority leaders in the House and the Senate are Democrats. All right, so we have floor leaders, and that's what we talk about, like the whips and whatnot, majority whip, minority whip. All right, they make $193,400. So does the Senate President Pro Tem. So they still make a good chunk of money. Okay, they're making more money than me as a teacher. And I work Monday through Friday from 7:40 to 3:40, and then if I stay after school to grade papers, I don't get paid for that. But we pay them for what little time they spend in the chamber and then doing whatever else they do in D.C. Not to name names, but Anthony Weiner, for instance. Anybody remember him? Yes. Or anybody else that you don't like that serves in the House or the Senate. It's a lot of money. And do you know where that money comes from, Connor?
Taxes.
Yeah, y'all, us.
Take $100,000 of that away.
Yeah, it comes from us. All of our income taxes goes to pay them, pay the president, pay the Supreme Court justices, pay the Secret Service, the water bills, the power bills, their phone bills.
How much does the Secret Service make?
That number changes all the time. I'm actually currently looking for the new number right now to add to the executive branch slide.
What has it been?
Somewhere it's between in the upper 90s. If you're on the president's detail, it's a little bit higher because you have basically the same grade basically as what a deployed military person gets paid for being in an active war zone. If you're in the president's protection detail, you get basically what they consider that pay to be because you're always in the line of fire. So, yeah. All right.
The Senate $1.74 million a year to pay salaries.
Yeah. And that doesn't include. Now, I will say this: we do pay them $223,000, but then some of this money they make, they have to use to pay their staff with.
That's
You know.
a lot of money.
Yeah. They pay income tax.
Yes, they do, but it's not at the same tax rates as what we pay. They get a like a little lower bit because they're working for the federal government. So in theory, if I'm making $200,000 a year, I'm paying a lot of taxes. Paul Ryan is not going to pay a lot of taxes here.
So pretty much you mean the Senate or House not paying taxes pretty much.
Yeah, I mean they pay some taxes. I mean everybody pays taxes, but
Not as much as like normal.
yeah, exactly.
They should though, 'cause they get paid more than a lot.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so also on compensation. All right, so things they get, for instance, all right, we give them a deduction on their taxes for having two residency. All right, we give them a tax deduction because they have a house in D.C. or an apartment in D.C. and then a house wherever in the state they're from. All right, we give them generous travel allowances. All right, the number changes all the time. I've never been able to get an actual number there. Sorry about that. But then we give them nice compensations because of where they have to fly to. Like, some people have to fly from California to D.C. Oh, that's tough. They fly first class. Okay? All right, some of them don't. Some of them respect the taxpayers and they fly economy, because some of them are level-headed and don't use their power in the wrong ways. All right, they get a very nice life and health insurance plan. So, for instance, back when Affordable Care Act came out and Obamacare and all that, whatever the name was for it, okay, everybody was up in an uproar because they were getting something different than what the average American was going to be getting through Affordable Care Act. All right, they tried to play it off as, oh, it's the exact same, but it wasn't. All right, their premiums have never tripled. They pay the exact same thing. All right, but their health care in terms is a lot better than what someone would get if you got the Affordable Care Act health care. All right, so they're getting something that's 10 times better. And they also have a generous retirement plan. So it pays a pension based on years of service. So it is possible to retire from service with $150,000 or more per year. So, for instance, huh? Yeah, like basically what they put in plus what the federal government matches. So Connor, let's say Shelby, for instance, he's been in since what, 87? All right, he's 86 right now, or 85. He'll retire at the end of this new term, so 6 more years added on to his when he got elected. So what's that? 87 to plus 6 is what? Or 87 to 2016 was how many years? Math majors?
30.
30? Is that our number? 29. So we'll round up to 30. All right, 30 plus 6 is 36. All right, let's say he's made what? How much money has he made every year, roughly?
174,000.
Let's stick with 150.
150.
He's made $150,000 every year times 30 years of service.
Well, I did 36.
Okay. It's how many? 5 million. Take out some taxes, whatnot. All right, so he'd end up with roughly about 150 or a little more each year after he's done serving as his retirement payback.
Out of tax money.
Hmm.
Out of tax money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Because, I mean, it's the same way like when we pay into the system, like, but he's getting a little bit better out because, you know, the federal government matches better rather than the state governments. So, yeah. Question? No? Comment? Good? Okay. All right. Also, one extra piece of privilege they get. This is something I wish I had some days. All right. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. For any speech or debate in the either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So if they got up in the House or in the Senate and made a speech and talked bad about somebody, okay, when they leave, they can't be questioned about that. All right? They get basically what's called a cloak of legislative immunity. All right, so they can't be touched for what they say in the House and the Senate. They can't be questioned by the Secret Service, the FBI, you, me, anyone else.
What happens if you do? What happens if you do question?
I mean, then they don't have to answer. They can't be, you know, brought in and taken into a general court. You know, they could be questioned before a Senate body, and in some cases they would have to answer those types of questions or be relieved of their position. All right, there's certain issues there. But for the most part, you know, we can't drag them into a normal court for libel or slander like I could for y'all. Remember, if you libel or slander that's not covered by the First Amendment, they get it. They get First Amendment protection for libel and slander. So they get something that we don't have, and that's that cloak of immunity. So it's a lot different. Extra protections, lots of money. Why wouldn't you want to be a House or Senate member? All right. So there are some limits on them, on their pay. The only 2 limits are presidential's veto. So if the president vetoes a bill, all right, that limits kind of like their power. And then fear of voter backlash. So if they don't vote on something that you think they should vote on, all right, then you can, you know, you don't have to vote for them again. All right, you can vote them out. You can get your friends to vote them out the next time an election's called, if they're up for it. Put somebody else up that runs against them. All right. So there's 5 major roles that they have. They're not only a legislator, they're a representative to their constituents, they're committee members, they serve their constituents, and they're politicians. All right, none of that's really that important to what we're discussing. All right, we're going to stop. What time is it? All right, we're going to stop here for today. All right. So this is what we're going to do for the second half of class. All right. So I have a sheet that basically lists out everything we've talked about. All right, and it gives different parts here. All right, you've got 2 boxes. You've got a House box, so that means like Senator, House Representative, and then section. All right, so for must be at least 25 years old, what would you write in the House box? Is that Senate or House of Representatives? All right, so you put in HR, and then for section, you would list out where that's found in the Constitution. All right? So it's Article 1, Section what? 2, Clause something. All right? So not complicated, but you're going to do this so it simplifies the notes a little bit and gives you some more practice with this, because pretty much everything we've gone over today is like the first half of your test, your next test.
Wait, this notes or the worksheet?
This is a worksheet, but can you use your notes with it? All right?